A lone, devoted police sergeant arrives on a remote island off the Scottish coast. It's a place that feels trapped in time, with locals who seem like they're all one big strange family. He's here on official business looking for a missing girl, but something's not right. The villagers act like they've never heard of her, or worse, they don't seem to care. Instead, they keep busy with bizarre rituals, strange songs, and a disturbing devotion to the old ways. But as our sergeant digs deeper, his own faith and convictions are tested in ways he never expected. What he uncovers is a horror that's woven into the roots of this community. Something ancient and, well, shall we say, fireproof? Stick around, horror fans, as we dive into the chilling folk horror masterpiece that is The Wicker Man.
What we need is a female victim of sudden death. Can you do it?
He's gone from here. The evil is gone.
We must create from the beginning. We must build up our own creature. Build it up from nothing.
What an excellent take for an exorcism.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
It is entitled Naturam de Manto, roughly translated, Book of the Dead.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
What's up, horror freaks? I'm your undead horror guide, Boney Stiff, and welcome back to the Emporium of Dread.
Play with us.
Today we're stepping into the mist-shrouded world of The Wicker Man, a horror classic that doesn't need fangs or claws to get under your skin. Now before we start unraveling this twisted tale, let's set the stage. The Wicker Man came out in 1973, directed by Robin Hardy, and starring Edward Woodward as our doomed detective Sergeant Howie, and the legendary Christopher Lee as the island's eccentric leader, Lord Summerisle. But this isn't your average horror film. It's widely known as one of the pillars of folk horror, a genre that pulls its chills not from monsters or bloodbaths, but from the mysterious forces of nature, pagan rituals, and the clash between modernity and ancient beliefs. In fact, The Wicker Man is part of the unofficial unholy trinity of British folk horror, right alongside Witchfinder General and Blood on Satan's Claw.
Ralph, look. Look.
Oh, God, I prayed I'd never see that again. That's what they call the devil's skin.
What makes The Wicker Man seem so eerie isn't what it shows you, but what it hides. Set against the peaceful, isolated beauty of Scotland's landscapes, this film weaves an atmosphere that feels almost hypnotic until you realize that under all those charming folk songs and customs, there's something far darker lurking.
There was a girl, and on that girl there was a man, and from that man there was a seed, and from that seed there was a boy.
Alright, horror freaks, let's rewind to the early 70s, a time when horror was getting grittier, scarier, and a whole lot weirder. The slasher boom was still a few years away, and audiences were starting to crave horror that pushed boundaries. Directors weren't just interested in monsters and haunted houses anymore, they were getting into darker and more psychological stuff. The Exorcist, Don't Look Now, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre were all just around the corner. And into this strange experimental era of horror steps The Wicker Man.
That you may bestow upon us in the year to come the rich and diverse fruits of your kingdom.
A film that's as much a thriller as it is a horror tale. Now let's talk about the making of this masterpiece. Directed by Robin Hardy, who was more known in theater circles than in film, The Wicker Man was made on a shoestring budget, with a lot of it shot on location in Scotland. They used real villages and landscapes to bring that authentic, isolated feel. Hardy wanted the island to feel like a world of its own, and that's exactly what he achieved. The eerie rural setting became a character itself, where nature seemed to watch and judge with every scene. And then there's Christopher Lee. He was already a horror icon thanks to his work with Hammer Films, but The Wicker Man was special to him. Lee was so passionate about the role of Lord Summerisle that he did the movie for free. Yep, horror royalty working pro bono. He believed this film was a true artistic statement, not just another monster movie. He even called it one of the greatest films that he had ever been a part of, which is saying something coming from Dracula himself. But here's where it gets interesting. The Wicker Man wasn't exactly loved right away. Studio executives didn't know what to do with it. They cut down Hardy's original version, slashing scenes and storylines. And then they dumped it on a double bill with Don't Look Now, almost as an afterthought. But even with the cuts, audiences couldn't ignore the strange and unsettling power of this movie. And over time, it gained a cult following with fans hailing it as a holy grail of folk horror. As we dive into the twisted path that is the Wicker Man's story, our tale begins with Sergeant Howie, a man of deep Christian faith and unyielding principles. He arrives on the remote island after receiving an anonymous letter about a missing girl named Rowan Morrison.
Her name is Rowan Morrison. The photo was in this letter posted here on Summerisle.
But the moment he steps foot on the island, things feel off. The villagers, all too friendly and bizarrely open with their pagan customs, claim to have no idea who Rowan is. But Howie isn't giving up that easy. He scours the island, questioning the locals, but the deeper he digs, the more disturbing the picture becomes. He sees odd, unsettling rituals, children dancing around maypoles, women leaping over fires, and rituals to ancient gods. He's horrified, convinced these people have fallen into sinful, dark practices, and the clues start to suggest that Rowan might have been sacrificed. Howie's investigation leads him to the island ruler, Lord Summerisle, a man who fully embraces these pagan traditions and their worship of the older gods. Summerisle explains that the island's fertility, crops, and survival all depend on these age-old customs.
And you encourage them in this? Actively. It's most important that each new generation born on Summerisle be made aware that here the old gods aren't dead.
And Howie's worst fears begin to take shape as he suspects that Rowan's disappearance might be tied to a sinister ritual for the May Day festival, something more sacrificial and dark than he could ever have imagined.
This year, at the procession's end, as has already been proclaimed, a holy sacrifice will be offered up jointly to Nuada, our most sacred god of the sun.
In a climactic May Day celebration, Howie races against time, trying to save Rowan from what he believes is certain death. But without spoiling too much, the movie takes a brutal, shocking turn that solidifies the Wicker Man as one of horror's most unforgettable endings.
And make our blossoms fruit!
A nightmare of devotion, belief, and terrifying power of community. One that leaves you questioning what lengths will people go for their faith. Now let's dig into the characters that make the Wicker Man a chilling exploration of belief and community. At the center we have Sergeant Howie, portrayed by Edward Wooder, a man whose rigid faith and moral code clash spectacularly with the island's pagan practices.
To whose glory churches and monasteries have been built on these islands for generations past. Now, sir, what of him?
Howie represents the modern Christian viewpoint, clinging to his beliefs and trying to impose them on a society that has long since moved on from them. He's a man out of time, desperately trying to bring order to a chaotic world he doesn't understand. Then we have Lord Summerisle, played by Christopher Lee, who is the embodiment of the island's ancient customs.
And now, for our more dreadful sacrifice.
Summerisle isn't just a leader. He's a charismatic figure who's helped shape the island into a community that thrives on their pagan beliefs. He's intelligent, charming, and utterly unapologetic about the rituals he endorses. What makes his character so compelling is his conviction. He genuinely believes in the power of these traditions and sees Howie's rigid beliefs as a threat to their way of life. The tension between Howie and Summerisle isn't just a battle of faith, it's a clash of ideologies. Howie's attempt to expose and eradicate what he perceives as a dangerous cult highlight his isolation and ignorance. As he uncovers more about the island's customs, he finds himself increasingly alienated, a lone voice against a community bound by centuries of tradition. This creates a palpable sense of dread as we realize that Howie's not just an outsider. He's a man fighting against the very essence of who these people are. The film raises profound questions about belief and sacrifice. In their eyes, the island's rituals are not evil. They're necessary for their survival and prosperity. How far will a community go to protect its way of life, and at what cost? The Wicker Man masterfully portrays this moral ambiguity, inviting the audience to reflect on their own beliefs and the sacrifices they might demand.
And even if you kill me now, it is I who will live again.
Now that we've unraveled the eerie threads of the Wicker Man, let's talk about its legacy, and why it's become a touchstone for horror lovers everywhere. When the Wicker Man was released, it didn't just redefine folk horror, it created a whole new standard for how we think about the genre. Its blend of psychological tension, ritualistic horror, and rich atmospheres inspired countless filmmakers to pave the way for modern horror. One of the film's most significant impacts is its emphasis on the ordinary as a source of horror. Instead of relying on traditional monsters or supernatural forces, the Wicker Man shows us that terror can come from the everyday, our neighbors, our communities, and even our own beliefs. This theme is echoed through films like Midsommar, which directly draws from the Wicker Man's exploration of pagan rituals and community. Just like in Hardy's classic, we see the protagonist grapple with a culture that embraces violence in the name of tradition. Moreover, the Wicker Man has achieved a cult status that few films can match. Its initial lukewarm reception has only intensified its allure, as viewers have gone back to discover its hidden depths and complexities. Critics and audiences have reevaluated it, celebrating its craftsmanship, performances, and haunting score. The film's unforgettable imagery and powerful ending have made it a staple in horror discussions, a film that is both revered and referenced in popular culture. The influence of The Wicker Man extends beyond just films. It's also shaped literature, music, art, and countless works have drawn inspiration from its themes of isolation, sacrifice, and the consequences of blind faith. Whether it's a nod to its iconic ending, or the chilling atmosphere it created, the echoes of The Wicker Man can be felt throughout the horror genre and beyond. Ultimately, The Wicker Man teaches us the importance of understanding and respecting the beliefs of others, even when they clash with our own. It's a warning that sometimes the things we don't understand can be far more dangerous than we ever imagined. As we draw the curtains on our exploration of The Wicker Man, it's clear that this film is more than just a horror story. It's a poignant commentary on belief, sacrifice, and the lengths to which a community will go to protect its traditions. The unsettling atmosphere, unforgettable performances, and thought-provoking themes create a tapestry that lingers long after the credits roll. Sergeant Howie's tragic journey reminds us of the dangers of isolation and the consequences of disregarding beliefs that differ from our own. In a world where we often clash over our values, the Wicker Man serves as a chilling reminder of the power of community and faith, no matter how dark it may appear. Ultimately, the film's legacy is not just in its impact on the horror genre, but in its ability to spark conversation about belief, tradition, and the human experience. It invites us to reflect on our own conventions and the communities we belong to, asking the unsettling question, what sacrifices are we willing to make for our own beliefs? So as you journey into the realm of folk horror, let the Wicker Man guide your way. Just remember, sometimes the most terrifying things aren't the monsters in the shadows, but the truths we uncover in the light.
Awake, ye heathens, and howl! It is the Lord who hath laid waste your orchards!
If you're craving more fright-filled content like this, don't forget to hit the like button to help me spread the channel faster than a plague of rats. And if you would, please subscribe and ring the undead life out of the bell so you never miss a ghoulish episode. And as always, keep the lights low and stay stiff.